respect is both ways, going from and to, is difficult to earn and very easy to lose. So you can't just demand respect because I am your father. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. It's not 1960 anymore. Mm-hmm. We do train our kids to question things, to be open-minded, to look for different perspectives. And when they start questioning you as a parent, it is what you want them to do. Unfortunately, it's not what you want them to do.
Are you ready to take back control of your time and energy? But the thought of where to start feels overwhelming. I created something for you. It's called the Energy Finder Quiz. Yep. This quiz takes less than 2 minutes and it helps you identify where to focus so you can conquer your dreams without feeling like you're failing as a mother. After coaching hundreds of women, helping them reverse engineer how they want to feel in their personal and professional lives, I started to notice 4 hidden skills that women must master in order to create the work-life balance that they crave. So head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/life quiz. heatherchauvin.com/life, LIFE quiz, QUIZ, and get started. I even give you specific podcast episodes to listen to based on your Energy Finder quiz results. The goal is to show you where to focus so you can regain your time and energy and become the woman you deeply know you are capable of becoming. heatherchauvin.com/life quiz. Parenting a teenager and anger. So, to preface this, or to put it into context, obviously this podcast is mainly geared towards women. Most of the women that I attract are in partnerships with men. Not all of them. But we are in a stage of parenting where the teenage years are rearing their beautiful head. And it's challenging, to say the least. And I'm finding that some of the emotional challenges that I've had in developmental phases or seasons of our kids' lives, this has been the most emotionally challenging for me. But I would say when it comes to anger, I'm a completely different person. Like, I used to be very angry when the kids were small, and now I'm not really angry. I'm more like grieving, or I'm scared, right? Because I have less control. So I'm managing my fear and my grief in this phase of parenting. And I notice that you're managing a lot of anger.
That's safe to say. I don't know if it's anger or if it's just unmet expectations, or how to put it into words. But the challenge for me is knowing where this person is, because I've experienced similar things within my life, and having a different perspective that I want to share that someone's not physically open to utilizing or hearing.
Right. Because you're raising a teenager and the parents at that phase know nothing. So there's two processes here. One, Logan, 17-year-old, is a teenager. You've been in his life since he was a toddler, and you've gone through many phases of development. The other 2 boys are 12 and 9. You learn a lot with every kid, right? What is, like, what have you learned in general from parenting and being around me talking about conscious parenting and all of that? Because I'm noticing previous to this, you've been really good at like, let's talk it out. Let's do this. This has seemed to bring up a deeper level of healing and self-regulation for you.
Biggest lesson was to communicate expectations clearly and respect both ways is difficult to earn and easy to lose.
Explain that and repeat that.
Respect is both ways, going from and to, is difficult to earn and very easy to lose. So you can't just demand respect because I am your father. It doesn't work. It's not 1960 anymore. We do train our kids to question things, to be open-minded, to look for different perspectives. And when they start questioning you as a parent, it is what you want them to do. Unfortunately, it's not what you want them to do.
Yeah. So when you raise independent thinkers who are not afraid of you, and
let's just preface this, they shouldn't be afraid of you.
They shouldn't be afraid of you. And they start giving you pushback and they start questioning, it's wildly triggering, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of parents are in this weird paradox where, you know, you say things out of your mouth. You're like, don't talk to me like that. Don't yell at me. You know, if I talk to my parents the way that you're talking to me, blah, 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 right? Times have changed. And raising children is wildly triggering. I always say it's personal growth on steroids. What are you currently learning about yourself that maybe you would not want to admit?
I'm learning a lesson that I learned a long time ago from jiu-jitsu class about just being humble. And not every lesson that I've learned is mine to share.
What does that mean? Not every lesson that I have learned is mine to share.
So not everything that I know.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
He does not want to, like, he wants to learn the lessons on his own. He feels he knows it. He feels that he has a grasp on it. It's his turn to learn that lesson rather than get the answer from Pops.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it interesting that we think, okay, I've learned this lesson. If people would just listen to me, then they don't have to feel that lesson. But part of being human is actually failing, falling flat on your face to learn your own life lessons.
And I think the hardest thing as a parent is to watch your children fail.
Yeah.
But I think that it is absolutely necessary. And it's a skill that we don't incent, because if you're failing, you're trying. Typically, you're doing something. You may not be good at that something. You may not be, experienced at that something, but typically you're trying something new. And that is where I think the growth comes in. The problem is, as a parent that may have been there, you may want to interject your
belief system
or your experience.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about anger. Anger. Red zone.
Happens.
Green zone. Yellow zone.
Yeah, it happens. Red zones happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the rule in our house with red zones when you're angry?
Listen to Heather.
Just
kidding.
Listen to Heather.
No, the rule of the red zone is do not engage when either person is in the red zone. And learning the ability to catch yourself in the red zone is a skill that is not yet perfected in this household.
For who?
Everyone. But it's progressively getting better.
Yeah. But I would say we don't really live in an angry household or a yelling household.
That's true.
Yeah.
But every household has their red zones.
100%. I think it's whether you stop and you realign and you're like, break time, let's try this again.
Being able to remove yourself from the situation is the absolute fundamental, most important skill set that you can learn. And it's quite tricky to be able to check that emotional box.
How did you learn that skill?
My wife taught me.
How did I teach you?
Lots of swear words. No, I'm just kidding. A lot of finger pointing, meaning you need to remove yourself from the situation. When I say finger pointing, literal finger pointing. If you're upstairs and I'm downstairs and I'm stomping up the stairs, the snap and the point going towards go for a walk or go for a car ride, that's the clue.
So I redirect your behavior.
You redirect my energy somewhere else.
Assertively.
Sometimes.
Okay, but you're aware of it.
Or exposing that,
Right.
like the snap in the finger point is just the tell for me, like, yep, you need to go somewhere else and cool off.
Okay, but you are open to that redirection.
Because we've had this discussion before.
How long have we been working on this?
Years.
Decades.
I don't know if I'd go decades, but definitely years.
Okay. Because think about somebody who is just starting this work, right? So a lot of the people I talk to, their partner is not on board and they're very all or nothing, green zone or red zone. And the second somebody says something in their red zone, like, I am not going to have this conversation with you right now. Let's talk when we're both calm. That is such a wild trigger I hear in the male brain when they're in the red zone, like the fight or flight. How did you get to a point where you're like, I am angry, I am going to disengage? Because I know when we first started having these conversations, if I would have did the redirect, that would have made you even more angry.
Processing for me takes time. And when I'm angry, I don't take the time to process. I'm a processor, so I require, even answering these questions, sometimes I require a little bit longer to answer them because I need time to think.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm in my red zone, there's no time to think. It's just fire, 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 fire.
Right.
And I don't like to feel that out of controlness. I like to be a little bit more calculated with what I say and a little bit more reserved, typically.
How long does it take you to process?
Forever, it seems like.
Well, that's what I think it's forever, but seriously, how long? Like a day, 24 hours?
It depends what we're talking about, but I mean, it's not an instantaneous thing. It's, it could be minutes, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 24 hours. Depending upon what it is.
Usually I notice for you, it's a whole 24-hour cycle.
For something major that I really want to think about, probably.
Yeah. So when I'm talking to people about anger and a male counterpart or female counterpart, whatever the biology is, there's this process of that person going to their red zone, right? And then me, or like the person who wants to be calm, cool, and collected, having to interject and say, hey, I see you're frustrated. I'm not going to have this conversation with you right now until we're in our green zone. So let's reconvene when we're both in our calm state. And then it's like rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then it's going to take you 24 hours to process what happened in the red zone. So then I have to go back to you and be like, remember what happened yesterday? Let's talk about that. Yeah?
Safe to say.
Okay. That's with you. I'm saying you in general. I'm just putting you as an example. Then we're trying to do this with our teenager, right?
Yes.
How many times do we or I have to redirect and say, remember yesterday when we had that conversation and you got frustrated? Can we talk about that today?
Lots.
Yes. So it's fucking exhausting. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
What's exhausting about it?
Resolutions take time.
Mm-hmm.
And reconciling that energy with the resolution is like that neural pathway or that pathway not being joined. That's a leech. That's an energy loss scenario. And that's just like, you want to bridge that gap as quickly as you can. But in my mind, I don't want to bridge that gap until I can fully think about the situation. So for me, it's a necessary thing.
It takes a lot of time and patience. It's like a habit.
To do it, to resolve the anger issue.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of testosterone in this house. I gotta bring a little more estrogen, you know? It's, yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. What advice do you have for men who are trying to understand their children, but have never been taught any emotional intelligence skills, never been taught to feel anything, and do not even understand what it means to feel?
Communicate your expectations clearly is the first step. If you expect your child to do something, communicate it clearly to them. Because if you expect something done and they don't know and have a full debrief on that to begin with, you can't expect it to be done in a way, and you have no right of being angry. Honesty is 100% lucrative. It goes both ways. If you're not honest with them and do them the respect of not beating around the bush, and
they're not going to read your mind.
Right. But yeah, don't lie, period, as a parent, and do them that respect. If you're thinking something, do them the courtesy of telling them, because you need to treat them like an adult. If you want to be treated like an adult, treat them like an adult. Okay.
How do you, and I just want to say this, like their developmental phase, especially teenagers, like parents are not right? We know nothing.
True.
And they are trying to break away from us. So we just need to let that be. So, and hold those boundaries and let them, ping back and forth within the boundaries. How do you, as a man, process your emotion? Because you're also, I would say you're a very reserved person and you got a lot going on in your mind or nothing at all. And I don't understand how you process emotion. You were a little Pandora's box. Like you're a little mystery to me.
To processing emotion?
Yeah.
I don't fully understand what that means.
Exactly. That,
like dealing with emotions?
That is the fucking point. That you do not understand what that question means.
Yeah, I mean,
when you're angry, how do you process that emotion? How do you get it out of your body?
Sometimes I write about it.
Okay.
Sometimes I go for a walk or a drive. I like driving. Sometimes it's going to the wood pile and smashing some firewood, depending upon where I'm at. Not so much at the house, but other times it's just separating yourself from the situation and taking time away from it.
Okay. Interesting. How did you learn those things?
Trial and error, in reading and listening to my wife.
I'm just kidding. Do you say that? Is that true?
Sometimes.
Interesting. So you do listen to me.
Sometimes.
Even though if I don't think you're listening.
True.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. All right. Last question. How do you want to be remembered as a father?
Dang. I keep remembering that this is not video, this is audio, and they can't see me nodding or what I'm doing facially.
Correct.
How do I want to be remembered? I want to be remembered of a man that had integrity, that did what he said he was going to do, that had fun and was involved.
Why is it important for you to be involved?
Because I want to create memories and traditions. And I want to have that imprint on my kids. And I think that the importance of my name, like my last name, my name, will move forward with them. Like, for example, the meaning of my father's name. My father was a man of integrity. He was involved in the community. When people say, oh, you're so-and-so's son, it resonates because he was a positive influence on the community. And I want to be that same regard.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Like the legacy of the name.
Yeah, just I want people to have a genuine positive outcome. Not that I'm someone that's going to be a slappy or a steamroll, but someone that had a positive effect within my sphere of influence, whether it's with my kids or coaching a hockey team or the community or whatever I'm putting my mind to, whether it's cleaning my neighbor's sidewalk or whatever.
Interesting. And okay, so how many times a day, I always tell you I'm going to ask you one more question. It's never one more question. How many times a day or a week do you hear me say, I feel guilty?
950.
Okay. I didn't know it was going to be that big.
I think just today it was a couple of times.
Yes.
And it's early.
So I think a lot of people assume that I don't have guilt.
No, we all have guilt.
Right. Do you have guilt?
I felt guilty for going to give myself blisters this morning, trying to train for this hill.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of guilt.
Sometimes.
You feel guilty for doing things for yourself?
Sometimes.
What makes you push through and like do that thing anyways?
The need for me time.
And what makes you create me time for yourself?
The desire to live in my own design.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's two types of people or relationships. Some have no issue taking me time and some do. What do you think, and there's stereotypes out there that men have no issue taking the me time. I see it all over the internet.
I think that there's a lot of posturing and a lot of bullshit with respect to that. Because if you're not feeling a little bit guilty, then there's something maybe not a little bit right with you. Like
narcissism.
I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. It's hard for me to portray that, but it's of course I want to be with my family. I designed my life to be here in my house with my kids and my wife, and like this is what we designed our life to be like.
Right.
But I am a person that likes my alone time. So separating myself in the morning to go do this, that, and the other is necessary, and I do feel guilty for it. And then I go and do it, and I feel better. And as I feel better, of course, then I can show up better for
others,
the people I influence, whether it's family, friends, or whatever.
And women always ask me about how do you get your partner to support you?
Support them.
So me supporting you.
It works both ways.
Help you support me.
Right. But support doesn't always look like just doing the blind, you should do this, honey. Support is also holding up the card that says, you said you were going to do this, honey. And it's like sometimes support is kicking your ass out the door when you need to be out the door, or when whatever. I mean, support isn't always holding that blind card of, you need to do this. Support's like, no, you're making a mistake because there's different definitions to support, I think.
What do you think our life would be like if years ago I chose to just stay with status quo and not change?
I don't know. We'd be living in a different house, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we would probably both be miserable. I'd probably have less hair.
You have no hair now.
I'd probably have less hair.
Okay. You think we'd be together?
Probably.
But very miserable.
But miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think one partner should lead? Like when someone, I think it's just an easy out for people, male, female, whoever, to say that they can't create change because of their partner, because their partner won't support them. How many times have I told you that I'm about to do something scary and that my biggest fear is that I will lose you?
Can I use yesterday as an example?
Sure. I don't know what you're going to say, but sure.
So yesterday you were on a phone call with someone and you said, I have to check with my husband. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. You never say that when you're looking at making an investment first and foremost.
Right.
And I knew right then and there that something was odd, that you didn't see value, that it was a non-issue, because with Heather, it's, I want this. I'm going to make this happen. This is happening. And it's a conversation that typically we have beforehand. This is something I'm interested in, blah, blah, blah. But it's never, I need a second call, or I need a second opportunity. I need to check with my husband.
I need my husband's permission.
Right. It's not, and that's what you physically said basically on the phone, is like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not happen.
But when I first started, actually, the first time I made an investment in myself, I called you and I said, can I have your credit card number?
Right. It wasn't an
Permission.
ask.
Yeah.
Like when you want something, it's, this is what I'm doing. And it's usually related to something that we've discussed beforehand to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's not like, oh yeah.
I never seek your permission.
And vice versa. Like if it's a conversation, it's, unless it's something completely that throws us to a loop that you, on a spur of a moment.
Or a big investment.
That we haven't fully discussed or whatever. But yeah.
And I always tell the story that at the beginning, I was so desperate that I was like, my credit cards are full. I need yours. And you were like, whatever. It was a few $100s a month payment. But you had no idea what I was getting into. And you were a little skeptical.
Yeah, at first. This is going back.
Yeah, that was 10 years ago. Then I started gaining momentum and you started to notice a shift in me.
I think that's more than 10 years ago. 10 years that's more like 12 or 13 years.
Maybe. But you started to notice a shift in me.
Yes.
And I started to make bigger and bigger and bigger investments, or more riskier investments, meaning scared the crap out of me.
True.
And I remember every time I come to you and I'm like, can I do this? Blah, blah, blah. And you're like, why are you asking my permission? You have never, every time you make an investment, you always improve.
True. But you're a person that does the work. If you're a person that Like, you're a person that if you're looking at something, you follow through.
Mm-hmm.
You have that track record. I have no reason not to have faith in that. That's a proven track record.
Even if I'm not perfect, because I think I consider myself an action taker, but there's a huge part of me that also considers myself as a non-action taker, a procrastinator, because it's not perfect.
True. But I mean, if you're looking at XYZ for a big investment price of, we'll say, $1, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that typically you follow through with and we see value from.
Right.
But it's funny that this happened yesterday. When you asked me for permission, I was like, whoa, you're not bought into this. And I wonder why. And then we did discuss that afterwards. And I brought that up to you verbatim.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out why I'm not bought in. And I really don't know if it's fear or I'm just not ready for change, which is in that area of my life, which I think is fascinating. I think there's so much psychology behind change. And when you're ready, you will do the work. But when you're not ready, it doesn't matter how much you've paid for something. It doesn't matter how perfect something is. You won't show up for it.
I'd agree with that, I think.
So what do I have to do to get you to change? I'm just kidding.
The blank look on my face doesn't.
The blank look. Honey, I love you. And you drive me crazy.
That's my job.
And vice versa. Right?
Yeah.
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 There it is. You just listened to the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast. If you want to take this conversation to the next level, head on over to our private Facebook group community, heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. My last name is spelled CHAUVIN. That's heatherchauvin.com/Facebook. Also, if you are a huge fan of this show, please rate and review it on iTunes. Every review helps another woman like you take back control of how she wants to feel and become emotionally uncomfortable. I truly believe the better we feel, the more alive we become. This is how we are going to change the world. And if you've been watching me for a while, if you've been on the fence and you're curious, how can Heather help me? Head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me to check out my mastery and mastery business coaching programs. That's heatherchauvin.com/work with me.